Good morning. We'd like to welcome you to another edition of the Sunday School Review. This morning, our Sunday School lesson is subject entitled Feast with Wisdom. And I'll just add, feast with wisdom, not folly. The lesson is taken from the book of Proverbs, the 9th chapter, verses 1 through 6. And verses 8 through 10 of that same chapter. Likewise, verses 13 through 18. Now, in this lesson, this will be our last lesson in the book of Proverbs. We'll still be dealing with wisdom, but this is the last Sunday school lesson from the book of Proverbs. In this lesson, I think I said probably about 3 weeks ago that Proverbs was a comparison. And here again today, we're going to be comparing wisdom versus folly. And in this 9th chapter of Proverbs, and once we're going to look at the entire chapter, which is 18 verses 1 through 18. And verses 1 through 6 of this chapter, it identifies a female. And for our purposes today, we're going to refer to that female as Lady Wisdom. And verses 13 through 18 of this chapter is going to be referring to also a female. And this female we're going to label Madam Folly. And in verses 7 through 12 of this chapter, we will see the principle that the chapter defines, explain. So verses 1 through 6 refers to Lady Wisdom. Verses 13 through 18 refers to Madam Folly. And sandwiched between, in the middle, which is verses 7 through 12, is the principle. Now, let's go back to the subject and explore the subject. The subject says, feast with wisdom. And I also added, not folly. So in this chapter, we see two paths. We see two feasts being prepared. In verses 1 through 6, we see Lady Wisdom is preparing a feast. And in verses 13 through 18, we see Madam Folly is also preparing a feast. So the person or persons that's going to be invited to the feast, so the choice will have to be made. Will you attend the feast that is put on by Lady Wisdom? Or will you attend the feast that is being prepared by Madam Folly? Now let's just say, for the sake of this argument, that you're going to have to make a choice. It's either one or the other. I know you might say, well, I'm going to attend both, but no. For the sake of this chapter, and we're going to explain why you can't choose both. Well, it's going to be explained in the lesson, in the chapter, why you can't just choose both. Okay, let's go to the preparation of the feast that Lady Wisdom is preparing. Verse 1 says, wisdom This is wisdom personified as a female. Wisdom has prepared her house. She had hewed out 7 pillars. She has killed her beasts. She has mingled her wine. She has furnished her table. As we see in verse 1, she built a house and she has established, hewed out 7 pillars. Now, in the Bible, numbers have a significance. Now, the number 7 represents completeness or maturity. And when we talk about pillars, you might say, well, the person is a pillar of the community. The person is a pillar of the church. We're talking about someone that's well established in a church or community or a leader. So the preparation that Lady Wisdom is going through is complete in verse 1. That's what it tells us in verse 1. 7 pillars she's hewed out. And verse 2, she has killed her beasts and mingled her wine. She has furnished her table. So you see here, Lady Wisdom, no doubt, has prepared the finest of meats, the best wine, and everything is furnished, everything is prepared. And verse 3, we see as she sends out the invitation, she had sent forth her maidens, she cried upon the places of the city. So she sends out the invitation, so she invites, she's actively inviting persons, individuals, to come to the feast that she has prepared. Now, I said there's a comparison here. The feast that she has prepared. And verse 4 says, whosoever is simple, let him turn in hither. As for him that wanteth understanding, she says to him, come, eat of my bread, drink of my wine that I have mingled. Now, if we see there, we don't see the only restriction we see is to the simple. There is no money required. She didn't say bring money or anything else. Just those who want understand the simple. And verse 6 says, forsake the foolish and live and go into the way of understanding. So again, what Lady Wisdom is saying is that, yes, I know you have a choice. You have the feast that I am preparing for you and the feast that Madam Folly is preparing for you, which we will explain in verses 13 through 18. So the idea here is forsake the foolish. In other words, the choice that you can't make a choice, well, I'll go to both, as I said earlier. So she's saying forsake that feast and choose the feast of wisdom. Choose my feast. And we're going to go now into the intervening verses, the verses that sandwich between these two invitations, is the principles explained. And we're going to start at verse 8 because that's where our lesson takes us. Verse 8 is, this is the principle involved. Reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. Reprove a wise, and he will love thee. 9, give instruction to a wise, and he will become wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. Now, in verse 8, reprove not a scorner. And I think about a couple of lessons ago, we defined what is a biblical fool. A biblical fool is one who reject or despise knowledge and understanding. A scorner is one who rejects knowledge, understanding, rejects correction. And this is what it's saying. If a person refuses knowledge, correction, they are considered a scorner. Or another word for scorner is a fool. Because that's what a biblical fool is, one that rejects knowledge. And 9 says, give instruction to a wise person. Now, the idea is that you want to grow in wisdom. You want to value truth. An individual that has reached the point that no one can tell them anything, they are wise, then actually there's no need for God to tell you, I know more than God. So we can grow in wisdom. And once you get to the point where no one can tell you anything, you can't be instructed or corrected by God, you put yourself above God. So if you're wise, you can accept correction. But a person that refuses to accept instruction, correction, they're going to despise that, and they're going to despise you likewise. Now, in verse 10, fear of God. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Now, again, we're going to explain fear, probably maybe now for the third time. Fear is not to be afraid of God in a scary way, but to honor him, to respect and obey him. That is what the fear of God is all about. Now, let's go to verses 13 and through the rest of this chapter, that is 18. And that is referring to Madam Folly. Let's look at verse 13. A foolish woman, again, this Madam Folly, just like Lady Wisdom, is personified as a female. So 13, a foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple and knowing nothing. Now, when we talk about a person that is clamorous, we're talking about a person that's obnoxious, that's loud, and a lot of times we see people in that manner, and they think that they are correct when they are loud, and you think, well, they're very knowledgeable. It just appears that way, and the scripture tells us they're foolish, they're clamorous, she's simple, and don't know anything. She appears to be knowledgeable, but is not knowledgeable. Now, let's go to her house. This is Madam Folly's house now in verse 14. For she sitteth at her door of her house on a seat in a high place of the city. Now, compare and contrast Madam Folly's house with Lady Wisdom's house. And we read it in verse, the first 3 verses. Now, Lady Wisdom has went all out to prepare this feast. She has laid out the best. And two, she has killed her beasts. And like I said, no doubt it was the best. She has mingled her wine. So Lady Wisdom has went all out to prepare for her guests. Whereas Madam Folly, as we see in verse 14, all she's doing, she's sitting at the door of a house. She's also sitting on a seat. And it's interesting, if we read verse 15 in our lesson, it reads like verse 3. Verse 3, let's look at verse 3 again. Yes, it's verse 3. Okay. I'm sorry, verse 4. Verse 4. She's Madam Wisdom, Lady Wisdom is calling in verse 4, whosoever is simple. So that's the invitation that Lady Wisdom is giving out in verse 4. Now let's go back to verse 15. And here we have Madam Folly. And verse 15 says, to call passengers who go right on their ways, whosoever is simple, let him turn into hither. And for him that wanted understanding, she said unto him. Okay, so we see the invitation to the feast that Lady Wisdom has prepared. The call or the invitation is to the simple. But note what's different with Lady Wisdom's invitation. She takes an active role. In verse 3, she sent out maidens to invite people, whereas Madam Folly, she's just lies in wait. She's preparing a feast, no doubt just a so-so feast, and she just lied in wait. She's not sending out invitations, but she just lied in wait for whoever is simple that comes by, and maybe if they look her way, she beckons them over. So whosoever is simple, turn in. I haven't prepared anything lavish for you. I haven't went out of my way, but nevertheless, I'm inviting the simple in to feast just like Lady Wisdom. So you have a choice. And again, we're gonna revisit the notion in this outline where you can't choose, well, I'll attend Madam Folly's feast, and then if it's not happening there, then I'll go to Lady Wisdom's feast. It's not going to be possible, because you're going to see what's going to happen to you once you get inside of Madam Folly's house. You're going to see what's going to happen to you. Okay, let's go back now to verse 17. This is what Madam Folly is offering you. Verse 17, stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. And we know there is pleasure in sin. So there's pleasure in sin for a season. For a season. Now, what is going to happen when we choose to attend the feast that Lady Wisdom is preparing, as it relates to the here and now? You're probably going to have the choice meal, the choice wine, and later it's going to lead to everlasting life. So this is the choice. You have a fine meal, and the after, that's the here. The after is going to lead to everlasting life. But once we get to Madam Folly's feast, as she says in verse 17, is that stolen water is sweet, bread eaten in secret is pleasant. Now, if you think about an event, I think they call him a hype person to hype up a situation, make it seem as if, it's really jumping. And here's the sad part about this feast. You got you come on inside, we having a good time inside. And the party may last for a little while. But let's just see what's going to happen. What is going to be the end result? Let's look at verse 18. Now, these are the simple, these are the invitees. But he knoweth not that the dead are there, and the guests and her guests are in the depth of hell. So based on the hype man, it's really jumping in it. The party is really jumping. But little did you know, once you get inside, you're going to die inside. That's why I said that you won't be able to, I'm just going to check this party out. And if it's not happening, then I'm going to leave. No. Once you get inside, it's too late. Because as 18 said, you don't know what you're getting into when you get inside. But you don't know. It's really, it's almost like they say, well, the party is jumping. And when you get in there, man, the party is dead. Yes, that's what's going to happen. And it's going to lead to your destruction. And that's why you have the two choices. So as they say, you better choose right, because if you choose wrong, that's your life. So as this lesson again presents us with the two alternatives, the two choices, you have a choice. Whether you're going to attend the feast that Lady Wisdom is preparing for you, or whether you're going to attend the feast that Madam Folly is preparing for you. And those are the two bookends. And in the middle of that is the principle explained in verses 7 through 12, which is part of which is in our lesson. We have verses 10 through 10 and 13 in our lesson. So that's the benefit. So that the idea is choose wisdom. Choose to attend the feast of wisdom and not the feast of folly. So this is chapter 9 of the book of Proverbs. That is the choice of wisdom. We'd like to thank you for watching today. Tune in next week for another edition of the Sunday School Review. Thank you.